Hi, everybody. Hello, thank you. Thank you so much for coming today for our panel for our opening of our exhibition, The Art of Exile, Documenting the Displacement of Myanmar's Forced Migrants. I hope you'll stay with us after this panel discussion and move just right across the way, and we'll have some food and drinks and the actual gallery space with there's 4 VR headsets if you want to view the gallery in virtual reality. There's also a short documentary film and some physical photos to take a look at from some of the artists in this project. So let me start by introducing our panel today. Thank you very much for all of you coming with the rain this morning. It's cleared up here in Southern California. Our first panelist is Dr. Seinenu Thein-Lemelson. She has been conducting long-term ethnographic and psychocultural research in Burma, Myanmar since 2008. She received her PhD in developmental psychology with a specialty in culture, brain, and development from the University of California, Los Angeles in 2013. From 2015 to 2016, she was a Templeton-funded postdoctoral research fellow at the Institute of Personality and Social Research at the University of California, Berkeley, where she stayed for 3 more years as a visiting scholar in the Department of Anthropology. She has worked with former political prisoners and democracy activists in Burma since 2013 and is finishing a book-length ethnographic study on the Burmese democracy movement to be published by Stanford University Press. Dr. Thein-Lemelson is also currently a lecturer in the Department of Anthropology at UCLA, where she teaches undergraduate classes on the anthropology of Burma and Myanmar, political imprisonment, and social movements and the controlling process. Thank you so much for being with us. Our next panelist is Mr. Koko Naing, the current Los Angeles Rohingya Association president and founding member. He is also a dedicated rehab professional for the state of California and serves as a consultant for the Workers' Compensation Injury Program. He holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and management from Florida Atlantic University in 2010 and continued his education earning a master's in rehabilitation counseling from the University of Hawaii, Manoa. Mr. Naing commenced his professional career in 2011 as an employment specialist with ARCS Inc., focusing on assisting Southern California multi-ethnic community facing barriers to employment due to disabilities and limited English proficiency. His expertise lies in work with disability and diversity, as well as global human rights awareness and trainings. Thank you so much for joining us today. And our third panelist is Dr. Sophea Seng, who is an assistant professor in Asian American Studies at California State University, Long Beach. She completed her doctorate in anthropology and master's in Southeastern Asian Studies at the University of California, Riverside, and spent 2019 to 2020 as a Fulbright scholar in Italy, researching the only Cambodian Buddhist temple in the country. Her expertise is in diaspora, Southeast Asian studies, and critical refugee studies. And hopefully we will have a 4th panelist joining us from Bangladesh, the photographer Sahat Zia. Sometimes we have, oh, he's here. All right, excellent. So Sahat is joining us from Bangladesh. Sahat Zia is a multifaceted talent, a photographer, a writer, a human rights activist, and founder of Rohingyatographer magazine. In 2023, he received 2 significant recognitions for his work, the Prince Claus Seeds Award and the very prestigious Nansen Refugee Regional Award from the UNHCR. Please join me in welcoming all of our panelists today. Thank you so much. So my first question today, and hopefully we can give just a bit of a background about forced migration in Myanmar, is for you, Seinenu. Specifically, if you can give us a brief background of what's happening in Myanmar that has led to this current refugee crisis.
Okay, so my thanks to Dr. Perkins and the UC Irvine School of Humanities for organizing this event on the anniversary of the February 2021 Myanmar coup. So I actually, if it's all right, I actually wanted to start with 2 cultural practices that are typically done in 2 disparate sort of cultural settings. One in the democracy movement with the political prisoners that I work with, and one that we do here actually in California. And so both of these practices are done at the opening of a conference. So firstly, I want to respectfully bow and salute all those who have died in the many battles for democracy in Burma. Secondly, I want to gratefully acknowledge the Gabrielino Tongva peoples as the traditional land caretakers of the Los Angeles Basin and Southern Channel Islands, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this place. I pay my respects to ancestors, elders, and our relatives past, present, and emerging. So the reason that I'm engaging in these two sort of cultural practices to honor the memory of these two disparate communities is that I really feel like what Dr. Perkins has done here, and a theme I think of today, is really connecting histories of suffering across historical time and geographical space. This is what I want to touch upon today in response to the question that she just posed me, as I also summarize some of the context and history of the current refugee crisis in and around Burma. So in Burma, over the last several decades, since the 1962 coup, there really has been what can be described as endless dispossession, countless atrocities and violence, and a deep mental anguish and suffering on the part of multiple communities in both urban and rural areas. Waves of violence, dispossession, and atrocities compel individuals, families, and communities in urban and rural areas to flee, with millions being forced into exile over the last few decades. These narratives of suffering, exile, and migration have too often been carved up, almost as if they belong to the suffering of the people of different nations rather than the same one. This exhibit today is one of few efforts that I have seen that attempts to bridge the constructed and illusory divide between these histories and communities of suffering. So this is one of actually the first times that I've seen the narratives and subjectivities of artists from the Rohingya communities in Rakhine State and the camps in Chittagong, the Kayin people of Kayin State and their camps in Masao, and the Chin people from Chin State featured alongside one another. As an anthropologist, I also work with a community of suffering that have experienced multiple waves of inhumane violence, atrocities, and dispossession, and have subsequently had to migrate out of Burma in multiple ways. So I'm just going to summarize this history very briefly and its direct historical connection with communities of suffering in Chin and Kayin State and their exile communities in Masat and Mizoram. And then I'm going to talk at length about the Rohingya statelessness and their history of suffering and dispossession. So just in Yangon, and for those of you who don't know, Yangon is the capital city of Burma, formerly known, the largest urban center, formerly known as Rangoon. Immediately after the 1988 People's Power Movement, and in the decades that followed, there were forceful removals and relocations of urban residents. This was widespread. Indeed, just over the course of 2 years, between 1988 and 1990, it is estimated that 500,000 urban residents in Yangon were forcefully relocated. Their homes and businesses, it was largely the groups and communities and neighborhoods that were targeted were largely homes and businesses of the military's political opponents, so dissidents and their families and supporters, groups like the National League for Democracy, the 88 Generation, and the All Burma Federation of Student Unions, just to name a few. This is a community, by the way, that I always like to emphasize that is religiously, ethnically, and socioeconomically diverse. So the political prisoners and dissidents that I work with also consist of Chin, Kayin, Rohingya families, Muslim, Buddhist, and Christians. It was not only individual homes of dissidents and NLD headquarters, which were burnt, demolished, destroyed, or otherwise violently seized by the military, but entire neighborhoods. The military, the USDA, and the USDP sometimes demolished entire urban blocks to make way for military bases. USDA headquarters, the new homes of military appointed administrators, hotels, and large shopping centers. After atrocities, violence, and forceful relocations, those who were forced to flee or compelled to leave would settle in either areas for internally displaced inside of Burma. So these are some of the satellite towns that we find outside of Yangon, such as Shui Bida, but also tens of thousands migrated out of Burma into exile, often passing through Kayin State and to Masao in Thailand, or through Chin State and into the border areas of India and Mizoram. These waves of dispossession took place across Burma in both rural and urban settings from 1988 to 2010. Most significantly, at least with the community that I work with, and there are many more communities of suffering and displacement, with the communities that I've worked with, the significant migrations were in 1988, 1999, 1995, 1996, and in 2007, all after cycles of protest and subsequent violence by the military. Almost all of these histories of dispossession and migration are largely undocumented, and the histories are entirely silenced. Significantly, in 1988, there were many political dissidents who settled in Chin and Kachin and Cayenne state and who were forced to stay in the refugee camps, for example, in Mae Sot. Just to give you a sense of how long exile and dispossession can last, as well as the extent to which these histories are intimately intertwined rather than disconnected from one another. I spoke with a dissident who was involved in the 1988 People's Power Movement, organizing alongside the 88 generation in 2014, who almost 30 years later was still residing in the refugee camps where Dr. Perkins works in Mae Sot. If you have read, which I recommend that you do, 50 Years in the Cayenne Revolution, the daughter of Saul Ralph and Naw Shira, well-known leaders of the Cayenne Revolution and armed struggle, is actually married to a dissident from 1988. So when I say these histories are intimately intertwined, they're actually intimately intertwined. And the history of the deep suffering and dispossession of the Rohingya communities in Rakhine State are also deeply intertwined with and relevant to these other histories. Rohingya communities in Rakhine State have been the target of multiple massacres and atrocities perpetrated by the Burmese military from 1962 to the present day. Starting from 1962, General Naing adopted a policy to suppress and oust the Rohingya communities from the country by banning all Rohingya cultural related and socio-cultural activities and organizations. In 1978, Naing launched something known as Operation Dragon, which forcefully relocated 250,000 Rohingya refugees to Bangladesh. Many of these Rohingya went on to places like the United States, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and there's this very large diaspora community that continues to exist all over the world. In 1979, these communities were able to return to Burma under an agreement with Bangladesh and Burma, but this was really the beginning of a deep disenfranchisement, dispossession, and deep vulnerability for these communities. In 1992, yet another forced relocation and quote unquote military clearance operation that dispossessed hundreds of thousands. In 2012, there were communal riots between Arakanese communities and Rohingya communities in Rakhine State. During this time, entire villages and sections of the cities were burned down. In 2016, the military launched yet another brutal campaign in Rakhine State. There were extrajudicial killings, sexual violence, forceful relocations, and very similar patterns of burning down villages and houses. 800,000 fled into neighboring Bangladesh, and now it's estimated that up to 1 million Rohingya refugees are in Bangladesh. So Dr. Perkins also wanted me to speak a little bit about the psychological impact of forced migration and exile, particularly its impact on creative expression and art. I actually think that I didn't prepare much for this because I think the photographers and artists that are here with us today can speak to how they sublimate and create new worlds and new possibilities through different artistic mediums. And I also do not feel that it's easily articulated and generalizable how people sublimate. But ways of sublimating are always simultaneously singular and transcendent for individuals and communities. So I really look forward particularly to getting a sense of the subjectivity of these artists, particularly the Rohingya artists and photographers in this exhibit, because I think more than any of the communities of suffering in Burma, the Rohingya have been portrayed in media and academic and journalistic writings almost entirely through a very narrow humanitarian lens. There has been a transnational circulation of images of their suffering, often I imagine without their permission. The story of Rohingya refugees have been narrated in a manner which has been depoliticized, dehistoricized, and void of personal histories, psychic complexities, exertions of collective and interpersonal agency. And as a teacher and lecturer, for those of you who have tried teaching this history, it's been very challenging define holistic, nuanced, complex, and thoughtful accounts of the Rohingyas' lived experiences that rely on their voices and their own experiences, and that focuses on their own subjectivities. So there are a few accounts of Rohingya subjectivity, their histories, their mythologies, their systems of meaning-making, kinship systems, caregiving practices, practices around food and eating, sense of political and interpersonal agency, as I've said, conceptualizations of suffering, as well as their modes of resilience, resistance, and as I said, sublimation. So there's also very little sense, by the way, of what life was like them before they were forcefully displaced and after they are resettled. So I'm looking very forward to getting a sense of all of this. And finally, I wanted to conclude with the word contrapuntal, which I often teach to my undergraduates when I teach the anthropology of Burma. And it was a concept that fascinated the late intellectual Edward Said. So Said actually observed that contrapuntal music is defined by the use of multiple independent melodies, each of which is given equal weight and that can harmoniously interact with one another. What I want to emphasize is that there are these many communities of suffering and exile in Burma, many melodies, all deserving equal weight, but all having the potential to contribute to a harmonious nation state.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for those comments. And I think it's such an important point that you've made, that we often see this very narrow lens of refugee experience. And so I think it's actually a great segue if we can bring Zia up to join us today. Sahat Zia Hero is one of the photographers that's featured within this gallery, as well as his photography collective that he started inside Kutupalong camp. Zia, are you with us?
Yeah, it's dark here because I didn't have light.
There you are.
We used
Welcome.
yeah, we used
Thank
to
you for
run-
being up so early. I know it's about 4 a.m. in Bangladesh at the moment, so we really appreciate you being a part of this panel today. I think my first question for you is really along the role that art and music and photography has played since you have moved to Kutupalong camp. If you can give us sort of a sense of how Rohingyatographer started and the role that has played in your experience.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Carrie and the
One
Humanities
second.
centers and everyone there in the panel, and grateful to the Humanities centers and the California University, and thanks to all the participants who are joining our webinar.
So why don't we'll work on the technical issue and we can come back, I think, in a
Yeah.
moment. Maybe what we'll do is we'll, if we can move over to Coco, perhaps you can talk to us a little bit about your work as an advocate for the refugee and the Rohingya community specifically. How do you see the role of this exhibition in perhaps raising awareness, or you can speak of your experience perhaps?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Perkins, for hosting this event and UCI. Yes, as an advocate for the Rohingya community, global Rohingya community, this kind of awareness is great, but I think we need a sustainable solution, because I appreciate, the art and everything, because the world is still not aware of the Rohingya issues. They don't even hear about the Rohingya, because the term might be very new to some of the people. But the Rohingya crisis, has been going on more than decades. This is not the first time, like 1962. Prior to that, actually, it happened during the British time, the British colony time, and that there was some racism and discrimination that always exists in Burma. Unfortunately, even under the temporary democracy, there was also some democracy in like forced acquisition of Rohingya. And also, I also want to point out, history have shown in Rakhine state, there was so many evidence that Rohingya, Rakhine state actually was an independent state. Actually, Burma did not come to, the Burma came to Rohingya. We did not go to Burma. So there was false accusation saying that Rohingya illegally migrated from Bangladesh, which is not true. Because the Rakhine state has always been independent, and then our culture, the Rohingya culture and the Bengali culture is totally different. Yes, the dialect might be same, like Chittagonian, the accent might be same, but the language is totally different because Bengali, they speak Bengali, and Rohingya, we speak our own language, Rohingya language. So that also the world need to be aware, because there was also a common misconception by the majority Burmese and also like the diaspora all over the world is saying that, oh, Rohingya are Bengali, they are distinguished, but which is not true at all. You know, we may look the same, and religious wisely, we may share the same religion, but that doesn't mean we belong to the same, you know, ethnic group. So it's different. So they need to be clear. And the genocide, you know, has been going on. Right now, as I can see that now the Rohingya in desperate mode. In the current situation, the AA army, Arkan army, Rohingya are used as a scapegoat. There's the Rakhine ethnic army. They're having a battle with the military junta, and Rohingya caught in the middle. So because of that, you know, Rohingya have to flee to neighboring countries like Indonesia and Malaysia, because Bangladesh is also, we cannot depend on Bangladesh, because I understand that Bangladesh is also going through their own issues, because we appreciate Bangladesh for welcoming us, opening door for us. But the long-term solution, you know, I think we need a safekeeping zone for the Rohingya. We of course, we want to live harmoniously with other ethnic Rakhine and everyone. But we need a safekeeping zone because it's not going to work out. Because right now, as I'm talking, there's a battle going on with the Rakhine army, AA army, and unfortunately, Rohingya, we don't have self-defense force. And then, you know, we are in a desperate situation. You know, like yesterday, I received a news that from one of my kids told me that they are trying to wipe out a city in Mongdo. Mongdo is a city close by to Bangladesh. So they want to replace them with all the military junta people. So this is a genocide. Right now, genocide is going on too. So this is a really ongoing issue, and the genocide is not going to be, because like I mentioned, the genocide has taken place prior to 1962. And we Rohingya people have suffered as a result of that. You know, we have to flee. So I myself, you know, have to flee. You know, my parents, fortunately, we are, you know, lucky. We flee to Singapore, and from here I came here as a refugee. So, you know, not everyone is fortunate. You know, I came here almost 20 years ago, and it's just genocide is ongoing. And a lot of people have suffered. People have fled to Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and, you know, so many countries. But all those countries, you know, they doesn't want us. It's not that I can understand. They also have their own problems. You know, we really don't want to live there permanently. You know, the long-term solution, you know, I see as an advocate for the Rohingya. We need a sustainable solution, and we need a safekeeping zone, a safekeeping, like a state. You know, we, of course, we want to live harmoniously with the international UN peacekeeping force, kind of like Rwanda, as you know, in the last time, the Rwanda genocide in Africa, and also the Bosnian genocide, the Kosovo genocide, and they were safekeeping zone. So we need that R2P solution, because now they talk about the military is always going to play a game. It's a cat and mouse game. The junta, you know, they will call back the Rohingya, and they will start their slow genocide. And it's not that Rohingya doesn't want to live harmony with the Rakhine, because the Rakhine and Rohingya, we have been living harmoniously for more than decades or more than a long time. In fact, the Rakhine also share some similar culture with the Rohingya. They also, somewhat their culture might be similar to the Indian culture as well. You know, some of the food is same, you know, even though it's the same, different religion, even though we look differently, but we share some culture values and family values. It's just the misconception of us, you know, we being a little bit dark skinned, you know, we may be a little different features, but at the end of the day, I think Rakhine state is an independent state. You know, we need because the language is not important, but everybody can speak. You know, in Burmese community, there's Kayen, Chin, Kayen, so many more than 150 languages. Some of them, they don't even speak Burmese. So what the Burmese government is trying to do, they try to Burmanize us. You know, we have our own state. We don't need to speak Burmese. You know, we can survive, you know, in agriculturally, Rohingya has been, you know, working as a farmers, fishermen. You know, they never even depend on the aid with the military junta, and they're not giving the aid to Rakhine at all. So same thing versus for other ethnicity. I can understand the Chin and Kayen, they've been going through the same suffering too. They also have their own, I know, they have their own defense force and stuff. But unfortunately for us, we don't have our own defense. We are like stateless and defenseless, and we got bullied, and we got genocide, we got pushed out. We're in the middle of the situation. So right now, I think international community need to intervene immediately, because today is the 3-year anniversary of the military coup, and nothing is done. And ASEAN has been silent. ASEAN has been very silent. The Association of Southeast Asian, they all are only playing the economy game. They have non-intervention policy. They are not doing anything to Burma. So we need to, get rid of the military junta, the central government, because I know there was a proposal done a long time ago. There was under the Bush administration, George Bush administration, that was back in the 90s. There was a plan to build a area of the military junta, the central government. That's the central key government, because they were saying 25%, but it's not going to work, because I know Burma was founded on a military principle, but unfortunately, we need to completely let go of the military power. Because any country in the world, military should never intervene in the local politics, in the local democracy formation. As soon as there's a military involved, the military is still going to play the cat and mouse game, bringing the refugee, and they will commit the genocide, and it's not going to work, So that's, I think the long-term solution is a safekeeping zone. Rohingya.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments. And thank you also for the work that you've done in the community. And I know from your perspective, working with the diaspora here in Los Angeles for the past couple of years, I think that this aspect of education and continuing to keep this issue at the forefront has been largely influential in keeping this cause alive. Is Sahat? So Sahat, if you're with us, perhaps you can talk a little bit about your work with Rohingyatographer and the value of that work within your
Hi
community.
everyone. Hi everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, actually, it is dark here because I don't have light in my shelter, and it's already 4 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. now. So everyone is sleeping in the shelter. And yeah, and first of all, I would like to thank Carrie for organizing this art exhibition and showing the Rohingya story to the audience there in the California, and I would like to thank everyone there in the in the humanity centers, in the panelists, and the participants who are joining our webinar today. So my name is Sahat. I'm a Rohingya refugee fled from Myanmar in 2017 with my family. Now currently living in the world largest refugee camp in Cox's Bazar. So before arriving in the refugee camp, I had been studying in the university in Myanmar in UCHRI. So I studied physics second year in 2012, and after 2012, our education was banned because after the religious violence in Rakhine State. So I could not complete my graduation. Then I started working with my family, supporting them for the family work in our village, and I started taking photographs with on a smartphone since 2014, and I mostly use it to take photos of the sport like football and other sport that young children and the youth play in the village. So I am very passionate taking photographs since that time. Then after arriving here in the refugee camp, I started working with the humanitarian organization. So I like to take photographs and sharing their stories, especially because the people here in the refugee camp are facing the severe humanitarian crisis and the other crisis here. So I think it's important for us to raise awareness about the crisis that we are facing. So yeah, I started telling stories of my community uh, to the people around the world, so the people can know the reality of the Rohingya refugees living in the coast in the refugee camp in Cox's Bazar. And I founded Rohingyatographer magazine in 2021 by the support of the David Palazon, my friend, who is based in Denmark, and he supported me for designing and producing the magazine. So it's a collective documentary photography magazine. I founded this Rohingyatographer magazine especially as a platform for Rohingya youth to develop their photography skill, and I use the medium as a tool for self-expression and community development and the participatory action research. So the magazine is created by a collective of talented Rohingya photographers. Currently, we have more than 30 young photographers in our team, more than 10 women photographers, including 10 women photographers. So by learning this method such as photo voice, the project aim to raise awareness about the Rohingya community and their situation, and while also providing a historical record of their life and experience in the refugee camp. Rohingyatographer magazine project has empowered Rohingya youth to tell their history through photography and to participate in global dialogue about the issues that they face and that the Rohingya refugees, Rohingya community face. And after the COVID-19, when media journalist access to the camp was more restricted, these young photographers have taken social media to share their perspective and experience in their own word, with their perspective. Uh, uh, so they raise awareness and they tell a story from the camp. So the people living in other corner of the world could hear the voice of Rohingya refugees, what's happening there, and what is the situation, the current situation there in the camp. So through their art, they are not educating themselves, but also providing the valuable insight into the life of Rohingya people for others to learn from them. So this Rohingyatographer magazine is a unique and essential publication for everyone who are interested in the Rohingya experience, community-led documentary photography, and human rights and the refugee studies.
Thank you so much. And we'll have a link in the gallery also if you want to see the work of the other artists. As Sahat mentioned, this collection of 30 photographers in the camp is nothing short of remarkable as far as the output of the work that they have been able to provide, as well as giving a platform to female photographers specifically within the camp, which has been also just a really enlightening project. I might switch to Sophea now. Dr. Seng, if you can talk a little bit about your experience. I know that you work with Southeast Asian diaspora, specifically related to some creative outlets, music, painting, these sorts of things. Maybe you can talk about the value of that within your own work.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Perkins, for having me here. So myself, my family arrived as, I was born in Cambodia, and my family arrived here as refugees. And we resettled in San Jose, so I grew up for half of my life. Before it was the Silicon Valley, so there were like walnut trees everywhere, and you could go out all day. I remember just childhood being basically a lot of independence. I came to Long Beach because it's the largest Khmer diaspora outside of Southeast Asia. And so I came here as a grad student 10 years ago, and I started doing a lot of community work, just initially as a volunteer Khmer English bilingual teacher. A lot of the senior citizens wanted citizenship, right? Because with the 1996 the Welfare Reform Act under President Clinton, those who had green cards could have their benefits revoked, right? And so people wanted citizenship because they were afraid of losing their benefits, especially the senior citizens. And in working with them, I realized that even though I'd grown up in a refugee family, I myself had internalized some of that discourse, as Seinenu was talking about, of the refugee as a subject or a site of just suffering or humanitarian aid, right? So, even though my parents are quite strong, but I didn't realize this until working with them. And so in terms of art, music, and diaspora, you see it all over the city, right? You see it on the murals, you see Angkor Wat, the monuments, you see the Apsara dancers, things like, I was writing, there are Khmer dance schools, there's rap that comes out of Long Beach, right? So it's very integrated, intertwined with the culture of the city itself, right? So Cambodians, Long Beach wouldn't be Long Beach, Central Long Beach without Cambodians, right? It kind of, within that interracial, interethnic, diverse community, that's become the Cambodian American experience. And that's part of the art, and that's part of the expression, right? So something that's living, something that's moving. And kind of what I'm starting to look at now, a lot of the work has been done on my generation, the 1.5 generation, those who, we were born in either Cambodia or in the refugee camp in Khao Yai, but we grew up here. But the older folks, as I realized, the survivors themselves, they've been kind of overshadowed by these discourses of humanitarianism, of suffering. All the studies that are done under the scholarship were almost all kind of, I would say, like almost pathological. And, I would argue that, and I think that this relates to the art is because these practices, so what I look at are these bands, they're called like wedding bands. So they're basically these do-it-yourself bands, and they play throughout the year. And they're mostly older folks, right? So they've been playing since the refugee camps. Whenever they got together, if they would find like somebody who was like an informant for the CIA, they'd be able to get a guitar. So this was quite common. So when they came to the US, the first thing that they put together, no matter what was going on, they would try to find a guitar, try to do a band, go to the Guitar Center. And so, I would say that the expressions, right, are ways, in a way, even though it's not done to counter these narratives, right, in a way it does, right? And I think that's it definitely relates to the histories of forced migration, resettlement, but it's done in diverse ways, depending on if someone was born here or someone was born in Cambodia. And so, it's like you're saying, a lot of times these works are depoliticized, but it's very politicized. And I think that it hasn't been politicized enough in terms of the older folks. And so these are some of the creative expressions that I see, this is a refugee community that's been here 50 years, right? And so, I'm like, what has changed, right? I'm still trying to think about that. And it's things that we'll continue to work on, right? And so I know this is not part of the creative expression part, but we're trying to work on a bilingual Khmer English, dual language immersion program in Long Beach, right? And that's been going for like 3 decades, and it still hasn't happened. Right? So just things like that. And these are all kind of related to heritage, cultural heritage, to, yeah, I'll stop there though. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I think it's really important as you're talking about countering those narratives, and I think as the panel and also as Sahat was speaking of, that you often see this reduction of the refugee to an object that has been commodified, often in the humanitarian sphere. And I think this creative outlet, as you said, is a really important way that we counter those narratives and change the discourse surrounding refugiehood and what it's like to be exiled, to live in displacement, or to live in diaspora. We are actually at the end of our panel, but we have 15 minutes for Q&A. So I would like to open it up to the floor. So if anybody has questions for the panelists or for Sahat, we are very happy to answer your questions.
Question about Dr. Thein-Lemelson. She mentioned academically study all Burma, especially Rohingya Arkan issue. One thing I think she mentioned, why it become we're still at 1982 law to make other status. The problem is this come from the John Naing instituted Burmese Socialist Program Party, the brainwash. And then another thing she mentioned, it's not a communal violence. There was a pre-planned by the government to pay two community fight, they can overrule, you know? So that's what's happening for many, many years. When, for long-term solution, and we see international community give aid, and we're working on the State Department right now. This year, they're gonna bring a lot of refugees, number one, for Rohingya refugee from Bangladesh camp. That's not a solution not gonna be solved. We want the dignified return to our homeland, our motherland. That's more purpose. Not international community gonna feed us for a long time, you know? So our go back to our own social status, going back to our home. That's our whole purpose. We don't want to go and live in America. I've been here since 1983 as an immigrant I came, and I lived that Arkansas state as I graduated from there, you know? So I know what's going on over there, you know? That's why I've been activist involved since I came to this United States and give it opportunity to speak of our own people, not only for my Rohingya people, all minority, other Shinkas, and Korean also the suffer a long time. We're the only minority from Burma take the case to the ICJ. No other minority able to take the case. That's why all NLD, NUG come us to use. No, we want the roadmap. If you want to involve us in the politics, what gonna be when become the independent and democracy back again? Our Rohingya people are gonna stand, not giving the fake ministerial position. No, we don't want that. We want our long-term solution peacefully, harmony, other minorities, equal right, everything like we did in America here. People come all over the world. Everybody follow the rules. Same thing, we want to implement the same thing. The now government, this hunger military government, they want to rule all the time. So you guys know that the NLD government was for 5 years and then took over again. They put in the jail. That's why we did the same thing. UNO government, same thing is going on. The world community, especially our Rohingya issue, when the Bosnian thing came, they diverted our attention. And Palestinian issue came, they forgot about other stuff, you know. But we have to focus on international one at the time, you know, the prioritize. That's my suggestion to the world community. And we've been working and helping all the academic in our school. I just came last September with Columbia University. We invite all Humanities lecture. We were there, you know, and the Times Square, the UN was that demonstration. We do other minority came also to demonstration. UN section was going on. But my question is, how world community can help those kind of not only Rohingya, other minority in the world of the server and stuff, you know? So that's my question, you know.
Thank you for sharing all of that. That's really wonderful. And you know, before I get to
If
the
you don't mind, to speak louder. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Is it on?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a little closer.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree with you on a lot of different points. And you know, I thought it was really really fascinating what Dr. Seng had said about the Cambodian community and them sort of applying for citizenship when they were concerned about losing their benefits through the state. And I think it's really interesting, that dynamic of these like humanitarian structures that are providing certain types of aid that typically a state would come in and provide, usually because there's a lack, there's a statelessness on the part of the communities. But then, you know, what you were talking about was, you know, what are the real incentives for the Rohingya community to participate, to really feel like they're included as being, they were taken. So the 1982 citizenship law that you were referencing, for those of you who don't know, that was something that actually stripped the Rohingya of their citizenship, not just the Rohingya, but many other ethnicities in Burma, while including many others. So it was really a mechanism of sort of state building and sort of dividing up sort of these different categories of personhood vis-a-vis the state. In terms of how to help, I think all the communities, I think part of it, I mean, there's different sort of mechanisms for sort of helping in this sort of, in terms of aid or practicalities. But I think what I try to encourage, I teach classes on political imprisonment and the anthropology of Burma at UCLA. One of the things, and we cover for political imprisonment, for example, we cover the Northern Irish, we cover the Burmese, we cover Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib, we cover Iran, the Algerian Revolution, the Black Panthers, and then Gandhi and the Civil Rights Movement. And so it's a way to sort of, I think what, especially for those who are part of the Burmese diaspora and those who remain in Burma, I think one of the main tasks at hand is, as I said, to connect these different histories of suffering and these different, and actually also connect the actual communities of suffering and sort of, and recognize both sort of the singularity of their narratives and their suffering and their history, but also recognize the transcendent qualities. And when they start recognizing these transcendent qualities, I think that's when we really, and that's part of, I think, the endeavor of art, for example. And I think that's why what Dr. Perkins has organized here is very powerful.
May I chime in also? Yes, definitely I agree. When art is a good way, creative way, because picture, there's a saying, pictures speak 1,000 words. But however, like I mentioned earlier, we need a sustainable solution, sustainable action plan for the Rohingya community. Because Rohingya want to go back. We want to go back to Rakhine State. That's where originally we from. We existed. So the international community need to do more than just giving aid. We don't want aid all the time. It's not going to help because it's a temporary solution. Sustainable solution. We want to coexist with everyone in Burma. Because before 1982 citizenship, at the time, the UNO, when under UNO, there was a proposal to include Rohingya as a different state. But at the time, they did not exercise. That we were not ready, and then there was some politics thing going on. But unfortunately, the proposal was going, and the new wing came, and General New Wing came and differentiated us. So this issue is, and then because of the brainwashing, like you mentioned, and like something mentioned, there's the brainwashing and about Rohingya and also the Muslim. Because in Burma, not only Rohingya, there's also other Muslim minority too, which is there's a separate, because they've been going on in Yangon. They also suffer. They also consider like a second-class citizen. They're not, some of them, they're not even citizens. They give them a card called FRC, foreign registration card. They are temporary because they can be in British time. But however, we Rohingya, we don't need citizenship. This is our land. Why would they want us to call it? We need more than a citizenship. We need our, ancestral land back. They try to hide the existence of the Rakhine State, like destroying mosques, destroying history, like buildings. So, citizenship is great, but I think what we need is, the international community to break down the central government. And I know we work with NUG and the local government here, but unfortunately, like you said, we don't want to be used again because they use us. History has shown, they use us so many times. We got used under the NLD too. Unfortunately, NLD, they try to get a military. Even the military also use us. At that time, the military, they give a white card, temporary voting power to the Rohingya. They call it, they want them to vote for the military. And unfortunately, some of us Rohingya, we fall into that trap. We thought, oh, we're going to support the military and the military is going to give us anything, but the military was using us as a scapegoat. As soon as Rohingyas start making noise, they try to differentiate us, they try to genocide us, kill us. So this is, like I said, it's a cat and mouse game been going on for more than decades. So international government need to intervene, like how they did it to, Bosnia and Kosovo, NATO, we need a NATO force, or we need a US armed force right there to break the central government. And I'm sure most of the ethnic army will agree. But right now, Burmese military, they are also refugee in India. in like the Indian border too. And Indian government has already, they want to kick out, they are already good friends with military in Utah. And I know China also is a key player too, and unfortunately in the geopolitics, China also involved because of the strategic economic zone in Rakhine State, the gas pipeline. I'm very aware of that. And China is staying neutral in this. They say, oh, this is an internal issue. This is not an internal issue. This is a global issue. Different countries are suffering because like they're having like Indonesia, they are very hospitable, but at one point, we don't want to depend on them. We want to go back to our own native land. And I think the key root of the solution is to destroy the central government, not the military.
Other questions?
I would like to add something. Current situation of there in Rakhine State, as you all heard about the situation is getting worse in the last few as the Arkan army Myanmar military are in the village of refugees in Bhutan, and just last week it was targeted by the military, and more than 50 houses of Rohingya were burned, and bunch of Rohingya were killed, and more than 40 Rohingya were injured, hospitalized in
We might have just lost Sahat. So I think he was speaking specifically about kind of what's happening right now in Myanmar with Rohingya, and there has recently been a bombing, and I think
Yes.
a village has been destroyed just the other day. And as you all have pointed out, we're here today on the 3-year anniversary of the coup in Myanmar, but this conflict goes back, of course, many decades and many years prior to that. Are there any other? Yep, please go ahead.
My question is to Naing. I really like what Dr. Seng was saying about the kind of community activities with the Khmer community here in Long Beach. If you could, Naing, if you could talk a little bit about how is the community, the Rohingya community, being kept alive within kind of LA or larger LA? Are there like community centers or spaces where there's or rituals or things like that keep that kind of hope of the community alive? Because really what we're
sorry, the connection was interrupting us. I lost the connection.
Thank you. Sorry, Sahat, we'll come right back to you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, what we're seeing in Myanmar is often quite disheartening, even though, we hear in the news that the army is facing, the Tatmadaw is facing defeat, and the ethnic armies are gaining ground. It's still quite depressing. And oftentimes, the diaspora communities, in times when the country of origin is under duress, the diaspora community can keep a sort of kind of community going and can be a great source of strength for, the future. If you could talk about.
Thank you for the question. Yes, Rohingya community, I know globally we are really resilient people. I also like to appeal the side in the Bangladesh camp. They are very resilient for the reasons. So what the community we are doing desperately, we have a get together every month. We have our Los Angeles Rohingya Association. We formed that organization in 2011 because I know we supposed to form early because at the time when the riots are happening, the kind said, you know what, we need to get together and form this organization. So we have a monthly meeting, monthly awareness. And also there's another organization called Burmese American Muslim Association, which you are affiliated with that organization. The organization also, because the Muslim of the other part of Muslims in Rangoon, they also suffer too, because in 2012, there was a riot in the main city in Mandalay and Yangon. So the Burmese military, they brainwash the majority of Buddhists, unfortunately, saying that, oh, Muslims are, terrorists, they are there, they're using them as scapegoat. So to answer your question, yes, Rohingya, we are trying to be resilient as possible. We have monthly gatherings, we get together. The majority of the Rohingya people currently they're living in Inglewood area. Inglewood just next to close to LAX airport, the majority of them, I would say the population of Rohingya one is about, in LA alone, about almost 100. It could be more, I'm not sure, we have always some in San Diego, we have some Rohingyas there too, and also some in Greater Los Angeles and some in OC, Orange County as well. And most of the Rohingya currently they're living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where a large number of refugees were brought there. They came from the settlement program. They had their own center, Milwaukee Rohingya Center, and Chicago too, Rohingya Culture Center, which we work closely. So we're trying to advocate with our local U.S. senator and also the California senator to bring in more Rohingya to California. But I know California is not the number one job because, as you know, the cost of living is very high here, and some of the Rohingya is not easy to find a job. But if we can provide a proper support and education pathway, California can be a dream. Because back in the day, the California was a destination for many refugees, or the Vietnamese both people, and also the Cambodia. They all used to come to California, was very generous. So we want to bring back that. And we have our own office in Inglewood. So we do a lot of awareness, thank you for inviting us. And we also work closely with the Jewish World Watch. We participated in the Genocide Watch walk, and also other Los Angeles Human Rights Commission. I'm part of their board member as a commission team too. So I go there, I participate, I update on local human rights issues, not only local, also global human rights issues as well. So we have our own center and own events. And we used to do, back before the pandemic, we work closely with Burmese American Muslim Association. We used to do a conference where we introduced the genocide, because the whole world did not believe there was a genocide. Thanks to Burmese American Muslim Association and also Los Angeles Association, we convinced UN. At the time, even UN told us, no, this is not a genocide. And the State Department, they want us not to use the term genocide. And we told them, no, it's a genocide going on. So now, unfortunately, they regret the decision. Now the US State Department has said this is a genocide after so many years, after so many decades of this thing happening. So yes, Rohingya, we are resilient. So we try to do events and get together, and you are more than welcome to visit our community in Inglewood. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I would love to invite you all to please come to our reception across the way, have some food and drink, and see the gallery and see some of the artwork from the artists from Myanmar that have contributed to this project. Thank you very much to the panel and to all of my colleagues that have helped put this together. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Want to say goodbye to Sahat?
Yes, are we still connected? Sahat, are you still with us?
He was. I don't know if he's.
Hi.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi. Yeah, I was still here, but it's fine if there is anyone who would like to talk.
If you wanted to say one
Oh,
more
okay.
thing.
Yes, so thank you so much again for joining us. We are about to go view some of your artwork. As part of this project, one of the VR headsets is being sent to Kutupalong camp so that they will have access to see the gallery as well in VR. Headsets are going to 2 other refugee camps as well on the Thai-Myanmar border, and then also in Mizoram. Thank you so much. I will send you links to our videos from today. And I can't thank you enough for joining us, especially so early in the morning for you. So thank you again. Give a hand to wonderful. Thank you so much.